Okay, let's talk about gun control in the US.
No, God!
And this is not going to be polarizing because the last time I did that, when I wrote an article in college, I got death threats. Gun control is very complicated in America.
Well, duh.
Because every single state has different rules and regulations.
This is America.
On how to purchase a gun, what guns are allowed, etc., etc. Of course, it's very hard to regulate things state by state.
Yeah, well...
Because there's no clear regulatory regime to check every single vehicle that goes from one state to another. So even though states like California and Illinois have strict gun control, they still have some of the highest rates of gun violence.
Imagine living in a place where every 3 hours someone is shot and every 14 hours someone is murdered. And I'm not talking about Iraq or Afghanistan, but Chicago.
Illinois will be the first state in the nation to end cash bail starting next year.
Going to make crime in the state of Illinois worse. The new law that goes into effect January 1st, 2023, gets rid of cash bail entirely. It also limits who can be arrested and held in jail based on the crime they're alleged to have committed. The Democrats who voted for this law say it's more equitable.
Dozens of shots fired by 3 gunmen during a drive-by shooting in South LA, recorded on security and front door cameras.
Because like I just said, it's not that effective to regulate this thing state by state. Additionally, the Supreme Court has explicitly said in DC v. Heller that bans on handguns are unconstitutional because the Second Amendment protects that. America! Fuck yeah! So what can the federal government do? Well, they can pass gun control legislation. So long as it's not deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, they can try.
Bitch can try.
To ban assault weapons, universal background checks, basically whatever they want. I'll note here that the only holdup in getting federal gun control legislation passed is the Republican side of the US Senate.
Okay.
And as a reminder, I'm not picking sides, those are the facts.
That was a fucking lie.
Or, and this is very unlikely, states could again try passing legislation that strictly regulates gun control. The Supreme Court will probably hear cases on this, and maybe the Supreme Court will overturn their precedent and allow and deem constitutional some stricter gun control legislation.
Is he serious?
But I want you to remember again that state by state regulations of this issue are not going to be effective.
Why? Why? Why?
All signs point to the fact that you need a federal government response here. People are always going to talk about how impractical gun control legislation is going to be, how hard it's going to be to regulate. Like, what are you going to do, buy back 400 million guns in the US, right? All these things. When the US government wants something, ignore my fridge making noises, the US government gets what the US government wants every single time.
Today's episode, how America's mission in Vietnam failed.
You don't mess with the US government.
But footage emerged that appeared to show Taliban forces parading captured American weapons. It was not the first time that the American military had mistakenly handed over arms to their enemies. In Syria, they airdropped weapons directly into the hands of ISIS.
And so if the US government wants to buy back your guns, criminalize gun ownership, open up recreational parks where you can go shoot and hunt, allow very specific weapons for self-defense, it can do all of that, and it will.
You clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger.
The only question is whether the will of the people is strong enough.
I'm not strong enough.
To get the legislators out there in Washington, D.C. to actually pass what we want.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
And as an aside, I gotta tell you, it feels very much like a virulent 10% of our country is controlling this issue.
Please do not lie.
I estimated, using data from the Pew Research Center, that 30% of American adults own guns. That's over 76 million people.
Whereas 90% of people are on the same page that we need to do more here. But that 10% is very powerful. That 10% votes, that 10% donates, that 10% lobbies very hard. That 10% feels so passionately that they'll send internet death threats to a 19-year-old who talks about gun control in an article.